Mind the Katy Perry. I'm locked in. Twins. This would be a different type of video because uh I want to be honest, making fitness videos is kind of hard because you guys have everything figured out already. Like there literally isn't anything I can tell you what to do. It's like all the same information. It's like I literally made a video about everything. So I'm kind of just making it up as we go. So this video will involve three different topics because I can't really drag it out. I don't want to drag out videos. Like I want to have purpose. I want it to be informative and useful and get to the point. So we're going to be talking about isometrics, doing the same workout over and over and over again, and seeing the difference between very almost no progressive overload and making bigger jumps in that area. And fuck, what else was it? My brain had a stroke. We're going to be talking about planche strength training with dips versus planche training specific work. Isometrics, depending who you ask, they're going to think it's a godsend. I personally use it as a great tool to bridge gaps in plateaus. Here's how I do it versus how most people do it. Most people, they'll do isometrics and negatives, and they're going to literally pick the final end progression as the way to do it. So let's take the one-arm pull-up, for example. What people do when they hear about negatives the first time, they think that, oh, okay, I'm stronger on the way down, so I can move and skip a couple progressions. So what they do is that they go from like finger assisted to straight up one arm and trying to hold themselves as they go down. The problem is the negative isn't a cheat code. It's not a skip button. It's meant to help you do the next progression, not skip over a few. Now, of course, it is possible to skip a few with doing the proper isometrics, but what you should do, let's say, for example, you're on the finger assisted, you're on two fingers, what you should do is do an assisted finger pull-up, one, and then you pull up, and then you do the negative. So it's kind of like a progressive negative. That is the gayest thing I've ever said in my life. I'm so sorry for making it sound more complicated than what it is. Basically, make the movement harder when it's easy. So you're gonna be able to go down easier than you are to go up. So what you should do is get a finger, get on that bar, pull up using your dominant arm, and then you let go and drop. That'll put all that freaking stress in that bicep and the lats, so that way you're actually using the proper negative in progression. Because in some areas it might be easier, like a negative muscle up. Most people can do the negative part of a dip easy, but it is the focus on making sure you can snap and control the tricep extension and going down. Control that part. That's the most important negative, because everybody else can do the dip portion. So what I would recommend in conclusion to isometrics as well, you should do the top, middle, and lower part. And when people mess up on, they do this. They're relaxed. What you should do is have your muscles still activated. I call it a little soft elbow. And then you're able to still build strength in that area, because you're still going to start from here and then pull up like this. When you get comfortable holding that position, your tolerance for pain is higher, your endurance is higher, because if you can hold up above the bar for, let's say, 60 seconds, that would mean, in my smooth brain, that you can do pull-ups for at least 60 seconds, the hard part. If you can do this portion and hold that, most likely everything else is going to be easier, because typically the hardest part, I feel like, what's it called? The ascending curve or descending curve? It's some scientific term where basically the lower you get into a movement, the harder it gets, versus the higher, like a bench press. I would think it's an ascending curve where it's harder the more you push up, versus like a squat where it gets harder the lower you get down there. So what I mean is, for the isometrics and negatives, do not treat the negative as a cheat code, because you will hurt yourself if you pick the wrong progression because you think you can actually do it. The negative is something you should do with control, where you can pause and breathe. It's meant to bridge the gap, not jump over the damn bridge. The next thing would be how I've made the most amount of progress in doing the same workout for like a month straight. Now, why would you do this? Would you not go crazy? The reason why is because it is to absolutely, like, idiot proof your progression, to make it so obvious that you don't even need to try. How does this work? How does doing the same workout do it? You need to make it harder in order to get stronger. True. So here's my method. I would take a workout that is hard, very hard. I can barely complete it. I rest as long as I need to, and then I do it again. I rest as long as I need to, and I do it again. By the second or third workout, I'm starting to notice it gets easier. People assume weight, reps, rest time is the only forms of progression. That's completely false. There's more forms of progression than there are Pokemon. What I mean is, when you get in better shape, when you get stronger, when your body adapts to the stimulus, you simply doing that same thing better is also a form of progression. When you view it as an absolute, if I'm not lifting more weight, I'm not getting stronger. In some aspect, you can see it that way. But what you're doing, what you're not realizing, is you can lift the same weight, but you can lift it better. You can lift it more efficiently. You can lift it faster. You can lift it with less fatigue. That is also signs of progression in your body getting stronger. So what I would do the same workout over and over and over and over and over again. I would do it until it feels easy. What that does, it basically kind of solidifies, cements, concretized? Cemented the gains, the muscle that you've earned, the strength you've developed. It basically like stabilizes it. It's like, this is 100%, because on days that you're super strong, days you're super weak, it's inconsistent because you're always trying different things. But when you've done the same thing over and over and over again, you know what's wrong instantly, you know what you can improve, and you know how it should feel most of the time. So when it feels easier, let's say like the 7th time you've done the same workout, that is when you've taken a hard workout, done it enough times to where it is easy, like a video game. That, when it is easy, that is when you shall make a huge jump in progression. Normal progressive overload is like the typical 5 pounds a week deal. You add 5 pounds to your bench every single day or every workout, and that's a form of progressive overload. Progressive overload, or I believe Atlas, or no, it was the story of this guy with carrying a goat. He would carry it as it was a baby, and he would get stronger as the animal grew in size. So that's the form of progressive overload in the extreme slow fashion. That's kind of what that is doing the same thing till it's easy. Then instead of doing 5 pounds a week, you jump 20 pounds in 1 month. So it's the same thing, but less thinking. And I love less thinking. The third thing, planche and dips. Why does that matter? I did an experiment on myself where I would do dips for 1 month, test out my planche, and then I would do planche specific training, like planche push-ups, for 1 month as well. And I would see what were the results. I found that I actually got stronger on my planche push-ups doing the weighted dips. And when I would do my planche push-ups, the only thing that improved was my technique during the planche. Both increased my planche, obviously. But what I found interesting was that the basic strength training, the dips, the push-ups, the pull-ups, basic stuff, that increased my planche better than the planche progression. Now, of course, it's because I'm more familiar with dips. The dips are easier to set up. You can have you don't have to worry about leaning far enough. But the dip, what it does is that it brutally builds the shoulder up without having to do much. You're basically simplifying. You don't got to do much. Just slap some weight on and crank it out. Pause. When you do that, your shoulder strength gets insane, because really a dip is just a push-up. And if you think about it, a planche is also just a push-up. So you're training your you're training your planche by doing your dip. That's some bro science for you. So I did weighted dips, and I noticed after like 2 months of doing it, I got my planche push-up, but I couldn't hold a planche. That is possible, because you can develop the bent arm strength, but you can't develop the straight arm strength to actually hold yourself in the planche. Kind of interesting, right? So doing that, I would put that same regimen in most of my other training. If I wanted a great front lever, or I wanted a lot more one-arm pull-ups, I would just do the basics and increase the difficulty on them by weighted variations. So one-arm pull-ups, I would do weighted pull-ups, pretty self-explanatory. Dips, weighted dips, that increased my handstand push-up, my planche. And because it really strengthens that fundamental power of just doing the bent arm movements, doing the straight arm movements separately. Because when you are able to focus on the strength category, because strength is everything in calisthenics, if you can't do a move, it most likely is because you're not strong enough. Technique is very rarely the case, except for like handstand push-ups and like maybe planche, maybe. But most of the time, it's just that you're not strong enough. So when you're able to just focus directly towards just strength training in a basic fashion that's approachable, that you don't need to do several different verifications, several different variations, because in calisthenics, it's hard to progress purely by body weight, because in some aspect, you need to develop a certain amount of mobility or athleticism that you don't currently have in order to just do a freaking progression, just so you can sweat harder in the gym. So definitely a big advocate for weighted calisthenics. Give that a try. Just do basics and see how your skills improve at the end, and just let me know, see if that works, because that was kind of my result. I got planche push-ups, so I couldn't hold planche, but I got better technique. So we'll see how it works for you guys. See ya.